from somebody is really special, and so we feel like it's something that we can do for the community, even though we can't like provide food or like toiletries. We're just providing some positive energy, basically. So the postman, we want to really thank our customers and the community for embracing us the way that they do. A lot of community members, this is their postal service. This is where they go to for their FedEx, their UPS, their DHL, and so we have a ton of community support. We're like a centerpiece. This is where you come to reach out to the rest of the world. This is where you come to send back your goods that you purchased. This is where you come to get the news. This is where you come to get uplifted. And so it's just really a center point in the community, and you get that when you come here. You get community, you get love, support, you're gonna laugh, maybe cry, but you're gonna definitely get some good energy when you come into the Postman. So if you are interested in supporting the efforts that we're doing, is you can basically, when you buy a stamp, buy an extra stamp, you can buy an envelope, you can send in some artwork, you can send in poetry, anything you think would be a really nice note to send along to someone else. Those are a few ways that you can get involved and help support what we're doing.
Well, we're going to be giving away breakfast for the children and the families, because right now everybody's doing lunch. Not too many people are dealing with anything besides that, so we're going to fill the void of breakfast and dinner for as long as we can. $10 on the breakfast bags. Till, what'd you say, Chef, till 1? 10 to 1, Chef Tariq says. Then 5 o'clock, 5 to 9 for community boxing. You see my man Drain back here doing this thing, Chef Tariq, Chef Chrissy over here. We got an all-star team, Chef Ariella. There's so many components to this. Well, to be honest, as much as I talk about accountability and being active, what would it look like if I didn't do nothing? Like, I can't talk the way I talk and not do nothing. That's the first thing. But the second thing, I love my people. There's nothing else to it. That's simple.
Right there. So if anyone would like to donate to what we're doing, here is the address right here, Tariq-Abdullah, and everything is going towards this whole project. Our goal is to basically be able to feed for the next 2 weeks, and after that, hopefully. But we're going to do the best we can for our kids and for our community. Shout out to Solomon for allowing us to use the space. If y'all hungry, come get that fried fish sandwich.
You see that? We just trying to give back, so come get something.
Well, hi everybody. Thank you for tuning in this morning. You're watching the morning show with Big O. I'm your host today, Trey Holiday, and I'm so excited as we really have a person that's going to be bringing some vital information to all of our households about what we are dealing with right now. So we have Dr. Mook from the UW right here at our studios. He and his team are working on this virus, so we want to hear from somebody who's in the inside that can give us some inside scoop, let us know what's going on so we can be at ease while we're at home, right? Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Mook.
Thank you so much for having me, Trey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long time. You came in way before this coronavirus thing broke, and we were going to do all of these amazing things on hip hop and chemistry, and now your world has probably been flipped upside down, right?
Yeah, it is quite upside down, like most people, I'm sure. But for us at the University of Washington, specifically at the Institute for Protein Design, we've been preparing for this for a really long time.
Wow.
And so we've been working on protein design. And proteins, vaccines are proteins. That's essentially what the molecules are. And we've been trying to study and understand how proteins work. It's based on the function as well as the shape. And so understanding the shape really helps us understand how proteins work, because proteins are everywhere, you know, from the saliva in your mouth, your hair, nails, follicles, all of these are proteins. And so are antibodies that work to fight against diseases like COVID-19.
Wow. Yeah. So let's get into it then. I mean, explain it to us. What is COVID-19 in everyday language for folks? What is this?
Yeah, so COVID-19 stands for coronavirus disease that was discovered in 2019. That's what the 19 is for.
Okay.
And it is caused by a coronavirus that now has been named SARS-CoV-2. This stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. And so this is very reminiscent to the coronavirus that happened in 2003, SARS, and another one that happened, MERS, in the Middle East. This is reminiscent of this entire family of coronaviruses. Now, coronaviruses, we have known about them for a really long time. Like I just mentioned, these two examples. But there are other coronaviruses, like the ones that cause the common cold, and many others that exist in nature.
Okay, so then, since this one is so new, help us understand what steps are being taken to really understand this new strain.
Yeah, and to understand the new strain, let's back up a little bit and really define what a virus is. Because I think a lot of people have a misconception that viruses are bacteria or they're fungi, and so they're going out to buy antibacterial, stuff. And you really don't need antibacterial stuff because we're not fighting a bacteria, we're fighting a virus. Now, a virus is just a simple piece of DNA that's surrounded by a protein coat. Proteins that I mentioned earlier on, which are the ones that I work on, right? And so this particular coronavirus family is different from regular everyday viruses like HIV or even herpes or other viruses that we know have become part of our day-to-day lives, in that they're called corona, which means crown. This is a descriptive word of what the actual virus looks like. It's got a crown of these large spike proteins that are embedded in this fatty matrix that protects the virus from elements. And so this really makes it resistant to heat, makes it resistant to weather elements, and then allows it to last in the air or on surfaces to up to 9 days. And so this makes it quite virulent and something that we need to be really careful about.
Oh, okay. So really you guys are understanding it from a straight micro level to really understand how to fight it. Is that right?
That is right. And that's how, in many ways, we as a community need to understand it. Because now our best practices right now are all because this is so new and it's always evolving every single day. So what happens with new discoveries in science, and that's what this is, this SARS coronavirus 2, it's a new discovery in science. What happens is that scientists get on the scene, they try to isolate whatever entity it is, and they try to study it, whether it's under a microscope or whatever instruments that they have, and they start dishing out information to the public bit by bit, only when they are sure of what exactly that they're saying.
Oh, okay.
And so when they say this is something that we all need to do they really are talking from a point of, we know for a fact that this is something that is effective. For instance, we'll be talking about social distancing measures and why everyone is being told to social distance.
Yes.
That is a directive directly from scientists, because it requires our herd immunity as not just a community, like locally, but globally, to be able to starve away this virus from infecting us.
So that was really my next question was,
Yeah.
I mean, people are not understanding
Yeah.
what social distancing is. It's really the first time I feel that any common cold or anything has made us be like, we need to isolate ourselves.
Yeah.
So you're explaining that exact question on why. But let's talk about, if they're not doing that, what is it doing? I mean, what is it doing to the virus? I mean,
Yeah.
how is it spreading that? I mean,
Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's get into it, because this is not a common cold type of virus. That's another misconception that is out there, is that people, because it belongs in the same family as the flu, and because it belongs in the same family in here, this is being lost in the sauce. It's not like the common cold. In fact, its symptoms are really quite severe, particularly fever, right? And then for older people who are above 50 years of age, they really are vulnerable to fatalities. You know, there's been reported about upwards of 30% of people who are ages above 50 who are dying. You know, we
Right.
first saw this virus emergence in November in Wuhan, China, and then slowly progressed to South Korea, and then Europe. Now Italy has, you know, a record sky number of reported cases. I think just yesterday they reported 9,000 deaths. And so this is not a common cold or flu. Here in America, we're dealing with the same issues. You know, Washington State was the first ground where it actually landed. So we were able to take action, which I really want to commend particularly the University of Washington for recognizing that this is something that we needed to be prepared for, and automatically starting to make testing kits, automatically trying to test our hospital staff as well as nurses. And so even though I am a Ph.D. doctor, right?
Right.
Medical doctors are on the front line risking their lives every single day. And our UW community has been really good about protecting them, giving them protective personal equipment to make sure that they are protected. And so, again, to answer your question about why social distancing works, it comes from, again, the molecular perspective. This virus is not a living thing. Unlike bacteria or fungi or animals or us, viruses are simply molecules surrounded by a protein coat with this fatty acid layer when it comes to this particular protein. And that means that they're just parasites that require a host. When you define something that's living, you're talking about something that needs to reproduce on its own. It has the ability, the machinery to be able to spread on its own and to survive on its own. Viruses like coronavirus cannot survive on their own. They require a host, be it bats where we think it originally originated from, or us humans. And so social distancing allows us to remove hosts from the equation. Once we removed hosts from the equation, the virus cannot survive. And so during the incubation period, in which is its life cycle, 14 days, if the virus does not have a host, it will die. And so the idea of us staying put, stay at home, stay 6 feet away from each other, so that if somebody is infected, we're effectively quarantining that person so that they can recover from the virus, and it can go through the incubation life cycle, and then they are no longer sick and they can come back and rejoin society. But in the meantime, we are not reinfecting to a new host and allowing that virus to keep on propagating.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I really appreciate the breakdown, because I think folks are, wondering, do I have to do this? And maybe they're a bit annoyed by the change in their lives and having to make the adjustment, but saving us is so important. So let's talk about the difference then between a vaccine and a treatment plan.
Yeah, and so that's why, in particular, the social distancing measures are really effective. And I understand that, yes, this might be annoying, and this might be like, oh, so if we in the young population, in here are not particularly vulnerable to this, or if you don't have asthma or your immune system is not compromised, then maybe you might think you're not vulnerable to death.
Right.
However, we are all carriers because we are hosts. The human population, Black, Asian, white, men, women, old, young, we are 99% identical in our genetic capacity. It's only 0.2% that separates all of us. That's where all our differences are. So this is an idea of a global herd immunity that needs to occur. And we need to do this now so that we sort of buy time so that scientists can develop a vaccine as well as many different treatments.
So that really helps me understand a little bit more about my next question, because in terms of, the virus is here right now, and so help us understand as a community how the vaccine literally helps in stopping this, and in this instance, like how does the vaccine help?
So vaccines in general has allowed us to get immunity towards pathogens since time immemorial, right? And so there are two ways that people derive immunity. One is whether you get infected and then your body fights against it and then you recover and you are now immune for a period of time. Right now, it's not clear how long you'll be immune to coronavirus after you recover, so that's something people are still trying to figure out. The second element is that you get vaccinated against it even before you actually get infected, and therefore now your body builds up immunity. And how vaccines work is, it's a wide ranging of vaccines, but some of the typical ones that we know is you actually get a weakened form or a non-virulent form of the actual virus into your system, and it's sort of like making your body aware that this is something that actually is something to pay attention. So it goes back to these proteins that I was talking about that cover the surface of this virus. In fact, one of this protein was actually solved, and we took a picture of it at the University of Washington. So there's the Wiesler lab. I really want to give a shout out to Lexi Walls. Dr. Lexi Walls took a picture of this, and because of her work, now there are scientists all over the world who now know exactly what sites and what shapes to target their vaccine therapeutics against.
Wow.
Proteins work in a way that is very much like a lock and key, where a key is shaped specific to fit in a specific lock, right? And so you need to know the shape of a target protein, like the protein on top of the virus, in order to manufacture a key or a therapeutic or a vaccine against that target protein. So what Dr. Lexi Walls and the University of Texas, as well as the Wiesler lab here at the University of Washington did, was allow us an inside look and a peek at exactly what is the shape that we now need to structure against. And so now at the Institute of Protein Design, we design proteins on a daily basis. And so we have taken this challenge head on, and in fact are crowdsourcing public participation. And so this social distancing comes at a great time, because even you can work on a virus. You and everyone here can work on a virus. If you just go to our website, bakerlab.org, you'll be able to sign up on a video game platform called Foldit, where you can now start working towards building a vaccine and therapeutic. In the meantime, scientists are on the front lines actually doing this. And there are many scientists here in Seattle who are working with this, not just at the IPD, but even at Fred Hutch, even at Harborview, and many different places. And all over globally, people are working on this cure. But it will take us some time. It will take us maybe 6 to 9 months before we ever actually have something. And so that's why social distancing is so important right now, so that we buy time for scientists to test the efficacy of whatever therapeutic that they'll be dishing out there, but also so that it doesn't interact with the current medications that a lot of us are taking in our daily society. And lastly, so that we know that once we actually take this vaccine, it will last forever. We don't want something that will be temporary. We want something that will permanently stave away this actual threat. And so we need to buy our scientists time. Let's not buy into the, mass false, beliefs that are going on right now. We need to allow scientists to go through the scientific process of peer-reviewed journals, and that's where we get our information about cures. We do not get our information about death from a journalist. Doctors pronounce death. In the same way, we don't get our information about a cure or a vaccine from journalists or the news public. We get it from scientists, and we have a process, and the process is underway. Let's wait for that process.
Oh, Dr. Mook, thank you so much. This is amazing, you guys. We will be right back. Stay tuned. We have a message from Councilmember Girmay.
Attention everyone, this is not a drill. The governor just gave a stay at home order. That means stay your butt at home. with 4 exceptions. You better stay your butt at home unless you're going to the grocery store, unless you're going to seek medical attention, unless you are going to work at an essential business. There are several essential businesses, and I'll give you some examples. Things like healthcare professionals, things like people, grocery store workers, jobs that society couldn't function without. If you work at one of those, then you can go to work. And then number 4, you can leave your house to do antisocial outdoors things. We know you need your fresh air, so you can go on a walk, you can go on a bike, but you cannot take a group hike. You cannot go and have a slumber party at your friend's crib. You can't go to any parties at all. You got to stay your butt at home. And I'm tagging all these people right here to spread this message. And this is the Stay Your Butt at Home challenge. Stay your butt at home.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Well, we're going to be giving away breakfast for the children and the families because right now everybody's doing lunch. Not too many people are dealing with anything besides that. So we're going to fill the void of breakfast and dinner for as long as we can. $10 on the breakfast bags. Till, what'd you say, Chef, till 1? 10 to 1, Chef Tariq says. Then 5 o'clock, 5 to 9 for community boxes. You see my man Drain back here doing this thing, Chef Tariq, Chef Chrissy over here. We got an all-star team, Chef Ariella. There's so many components to this. Well, to be honest, as much as I talk about accountability and being active, what would it look like if I didn't do nothing? Like, I can't talk the way I talk and not do nothing. That's the first thing. But the second thing, I love my people. There's nothing else to it. That's simple.
Right there. So if anyone would like to donate to what we're doing, here is the address right here, Tariq-Abdullah, and everything is going towards this whole project. Our goal is to basically be able to feed for the next 2 weeks and after that, hopefully. But we're going to do the best we can for our kids and for our community. Shout out to Solomon for allowing us to use the space. If y'all hungry, come get that fried fish sandwich.
You see that? We just trying to give back, so come get something.
Welcome back, guys. This is the morning show with Big O. I'm your host, Trey Holiday, for the day. And we are here with Dr. Mook from UW. Dr. Mook, you were breaking it down in that first segment. Thanks again. I think you already have set the tone for us to understand a lot that we didn't know. So we ended on vaccines. And I know a lot of people in our community are worried about the safety of vaccines for their children, maybe for the elders. Can you explain a little bit about the safety of these vaccines?
Sure, yeah. And so this is something that scientists are also very concerned about. And that's why clinical trials, as well as the scientific process in general, takes so long. So when we say we can't expect anything for at least 6 to 9 months, we mean we need time to test the efficacy, test the safety, the toxicity levels, as well as dosage in children, in elderly parents, and in everyone. And we need to do this with large numbers. And so a lot of the the conspiracy theories that are online are based on small studies that are currently being published as they go along, where maybe they've tested on 50 people in Sweden or 10 people in China, and that's not a basis for you to say, oh, there's a cure, there's a vaccine, because they haven't tested on a diverse population. We don't know who all it works for. We don't know how safe it is on the long run, and we don't know how effective it is. Right. So please, let's wait until scientists proclaim that we do have a cure and a vaccine, and we will have one. I mean, we have standing as descendants of ancestors that have survived thousands, of these plagues that are worse than this, and we have been able to get through it because since time immemorial, human beings have been able to turn to scientists for solutions, historians for perspective, as well as philosophers for predictions of the future. And so let's allow the scientific process to go on, and we will make sure that it'll be safe before it gets to the public.
Well, I think what is giving me already a sense of peace is hearing from a scientist, somebody who's working on this. It is already giving me, I'm like, okay, all of my stuff is lowering down. I'm very appreciative of that. You were just mentioning a little bit about the myths, and we do have to get into it because I have to ask you, Dr. Mook. I mean, people were saying this thing first dropped, and all of the black folks, it's immune. We're immune. The melatonin in our skin, the melanin in our skin. We're immune. Can you please help us understand what is up with this myth and debunk it for us?
I will talk about this with pleasure, okay? Because this is one of the reasons why I have been fighting for diversity in science. We need the URM, the underrepresented minority community, to no longer be underrepresented. We need well distribution of representation within our STEM community because of things like this, these really harmful conspiracy theories that are being spread around. Like I said before, our genetic population, the human race, is very much identical. 99%. In fact, less than 0.2% is actually different amongst us. That 0.2% owes to our differences between men and women, our differences between races, our differences between ages. That all adds up below 0.2%. So very much we can all get this because our DNA is all very similar. And like I said before, a virus is essentially just a piece of DNA that's wrapped around by a protein coat. Coronavirus happens to be an RNA, but it's still in the nucleic acid family. And so it's non-discriminative of whether you are Asian or black or white. All it wants is a host, and we will be infected. And it's unfortunate that it has taken people like Idris Elba using their platform to really show that, no, we are not immune. Let's stop, rejoicing in a way that was not okay, and instead take this serious. Take this really as something that is going to be damaging to our community that's already been affected, We don't have generational wealth to rely on for, great healthcare, in general as a people. We don't have, the representation that we need in many of these areas in order to rely on that. We don't have the privilege to not take this seriously, and so this is a threat that is affecting our community, and it's going to have an economic hit on our community, but the sooner we take charge, the sooner we take action and start practicing great hand washing techniques, personal hygiene, which I don't need to talk about with a lot of us because we stay with the hand sanitizer, but definitely social distancing is going to be one of our biggest hurdles because, for instance, I am from Zimbabwe.
Yes, I was going to ask. We're going to get into it, yes.
And that's what this shirt is. It's my, country map. And the Zimbabwean culture is extremely social. The word for Shona, the word for funeral in my native tongue, Shona, is called Batamawoko. This direct translation means touching of hands. In fact, the entire goal of going to a wake or a funeral is to touch the hand and shake and embrace the person, every person at the funeral, to say, and comfort them and say you're sorry. We cannot do that anymore. We need to stop that. We don't need any groups larger than 10 people, really larger than 2 people. We need to keep a 6 feet apart distance at all times, and we cannot allow this to pass through us. Unfortunately, we're in the age of technology, you know? So send money with, you know, sympathy and best wishes, you know, but do not physically interact. Otherwise, the funerals will never end.
Oh my goodness. And so that was one of the things that you had mentioned earlier too. There are, the cases are now spreading in Africa, and we don't hear a lot about those numbers. Let's speak to that a little bit. I know you were mentioning some numbers to me, and they were alarming for me because I mean, again, you know, we're so inundated with the media of all of this that a lot of the times, you know, what we're hearing and what we're learning is very controlled. The message is very controlled. And so help us understand, what are the measures? How is it happening over there? How is it spreading? What's being done?
Yeah, and unfortunately, the low incidence rate in Africa was one of the things that was contributing to this conspiracy theory that, you know, black people cannot get this. But without factoring in that countries within the equator or around the equator are really hot areas. And we know heat tends to slow down this virus. It doesn't eliminate it, but it slows it down. And since it's following the similar trajectory of Spanish flu that happened way back in the day and claimed thousands and millions of lives, we are worried that once the temperatures drop in our winter time in Africa, the cases are going to rise. And I mean, we've already started seeing cases now where in Egypt and Algeria had the highest numbers earlier on with about 300 cases in each country. Now South Africa is almost overtaking them with 400 cases. My own country, Zimbabwe, currently is reporting 3 cases. But here's the other thing. The tests are not there. You know, we have a problem with testing here, and that comes from a standpoint of the test itself is difficult. It's difficult to produce, it's difficult to manufacture, because again, it's based on the actual virus and the proteins associated. And so it's going to be expensive, even in countries that are low income. And the socioeconomic and political infrastructure of that also contributes to the fact that we don't have tests. So the virus is in our populations, in our publics. And because young people, you know, below ages of 10 or even in our generations sometimes do not show symptoms, then we might be carriers, and we are exposing people who are vulnerable, like our elderly parents, our grandparents, as well as people who have weakened immune systems or people who have asthma, you know. And so we need to be vigilant for them. We need to be vigilant for our global community. We need to all kind of take a cue from what is happening in Italy, where they are running out of coffins from burying so many people, and life has ceased to happen now because they are all shut down, trying to, you know, wait away for this virus to go away. Let's not get to that point. Let's be proactive in our communities. Let's start social distancing measures now to starve off this virus so that it doesn't have a host and it doesn't monkey bar from person to person and spread even faster than we need it to be.
Right. I mean, that is one of the biggest concerns because it is so new. Folks are so worried about these long-term impacts. And I know that it is new, so maybe you can't speak to it much, but I would like for the audience to hear what you may have to say in regards to long-term impacts of this virus. Yeah,
so you are right. This is new and it's unfolding every single day. I mean, hourly at this point, we're getting new information. But our recent history on the human race that we can look at as we can look at China, what has happened there and where they are now. So it looks like they have peaked, and because they've enforced the social distancing on a massive level in the entire population, it seems like there are no more new cases for the last few weeks. They have not gotten any new cases, which is really remarkable and encouraging that the social distancing actually works. We look at South Korea. They have also been very much regimented and, you know, telling basically the government has deployed people on the streets to make sure that no one is just going to parties or clubs. They've shut everything down. And so their incidence rates is also very, very low. But then when you look at populations like Italy, where the incidences rates are pretty high, then we start to see the impact of what that's happening in the long term, which is that there's a damage to the economy, so people are going into a recession. Likely America will be following that same path. And so what we want to do right now is flatten the curve. And people have talked about this a lot. And that that's because when the cases start, they start low, and then they start to rise, and they get to a peak point, and then, like in China, it starts to depreciate, where the new cases that are reported every day are less and less and less until there are none, right? Now, the height of this curve represents exactly how many cases are at the highest peak, at the highest virulence, right? And so in China, it was something about 40,000, cases were at the very much the height. We want in America and in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, anywhere else, to nowhere near 40,000. We don't want it anywhere near that. So we want to reduce the height. That's what it means by flattening that curve. So we want a smoother curve, because it's going to go exactly like this in terms of the shape, but we want it to be a lower curve, So right now, if the cases are 3 in Zimbabwe, let's try and maintain it at 3. Let that be the peak, okay? And we can do that by social distancing, and we start seeing less and less cases every single day. And eventually, after the incubation period is done, the virus will no longer have host. And then eventually, we also will have a vaccine, so then we will be immune to it. And so let's really practice these critical steps.
Well, I think you make really valid points for all of us to understand. I think the community, again, you've been hitting on it this whole time because it's so important. Yeah. The social distancing and where we are right now. I want to just ask you quickly. People don't even know they have any symptoms. Yeah. They don't know they have this virus. I think that, to me, and in my own brain, I was thinking, hey, that's really the reason why we have to do this even more so. Yeah. I don't know for sure if I'm I don't feel anything. I feel fine, right? We've been distant this entire time, but I think that a lot of people don't understand that because you can't be aware that you have it, then you're spreading it. Right. Is that what's really going on around the world?
That is what's going on, is that a lot of people may not be symptomatic, and so they might not show symptoms that they actually have the virus, and yet they do have it. And so their careers basically spreading it around. And so that's why, like you said, we've been maintaining this distance even in social settings. And so it might take a toll on our, social activities, because even, particularly in our culture, with elders, you want to be respectful, you want to, shake your hand, you want to bow, you want to greet everyone in the room when you walk in the room. I went to a historically black college in South Carolina. Anytime you went into a room and didn't say hello to people, okay, you get that stank eye, Especially we don't shake and dap people up. No, we don't do none of that right now, okay? We need to give people a pass, because right now, social distancing is the only thing that's been proven to work. And so if somebody's not symptomatic, that doesn't mean anything, okay? That does not mean anything. So we need to still keep our distance. 6 feet is the recommended distance from the University of Washington Medical Department. And so let's take that note and keep that distance amongst each other. And when it comes to hugs, I mean, come on, let's cut all of that out. Right. Let's really maintain that. And you're totally right about the symptoms. Some things that we need to take into account are, what are the symptoms to look at, in case you do have coronavirus, in case your parents do have it. And so I said earlier on that most people below the age of 50 have a low incidence of fatality, but above 50 it's pretty high, And so if you start having cold-like symptoms, right, stay at home. Yeah. That's not an opportunity to call your doctor, because the doctors are dealing with a lot, okay? They have cases where people have coronaviruses and the beds are filled, the doors are all filled with patients. We don't want to add to that stress until we know for sure. And I know that's kind of difficult to say and almost anti-intuitive to be like, so if I'm sick, you can't test me to know that I'm sick. No, we cannot. We need to give priority to the people who are really vulnerable, because also that puts you at risk. If you go to the hospital now and all you have is a cold to get tested for coronavirus, you might interact with somebody who actually has coronavirus, and then you will leave the hospital with coronavirus. Yeah. So you want to stay at home, especially in this cold season, and you want to be good to yourself, rest, sleep well. A lot of people are selling these vitamins and these immune boosters. A lot of that is expensive urine, okay? Yes. What we need is to eat a balanced diet, sleep, get all your 8 hours enough of sleep, hydrate, and stay put at home, okay? And until you start seeing signs of a fever, okay, that's when you want to start calling your doctor and find out if you should come in. Call your medical practitioner and actually find out if you should come in then.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Dr. Mook. This is such great information, you guys. Once again, I'm just elated to have you here. We'll be right back. We have some messages coming up, and stay tuned.
Attention everyone, this is not a drill. The governor just gave a stay at home order. That means stay your butt at home with 4 exceptions. You better stay your butt at home unless you're going to the grocery store, unless you're going to seek medical attention, unless you are going to work at an essential business. There are several essential businesses, and I'll give you some examples. Things like healthcare professionals, things like people, grocery store workers, jobs that society couldn't function without. If you work at one of those, then you can go to work. And then number 4, you can leave your house to do antisocial outdoors things. We know you need your fresh air, so you can go on a walk, you can go on a bike, but you cannot take a group hike. You cannot go and have a slumber party at your friend's crib. You can't go to any parties at all. You got to stay your butt at home. And I'm tagging all these people right here to spread this message. And this is the Stay Your Butt at Home challenge. Stay your butt at home.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm Kiana Pickett, and we're at the Postman in Seattle, and we're keeping communities connected. So during these times of uncertainty, the Postman is trying to do their job by following our motto of keeping communities connected. And how we're doing that is we're basically sending out a special little note to your loved ones, your friends, our friends, for you, for free. So if you want to participate and take advantage of sending and spreading love, all you need to do is DM us, email us, call us, text us, an address, who you want to send to, their first name, last name, and their address, and we're going to send them a special note from us and from you. We're doing this because it's definitely a confusing time right now, challenging. A lot of change is going on, and so we see a lot of businesses doing their part. Maybe their doors are closed, maybe they're not able to serve the community in the same ways that they have in the past, and so we're just basically trying to do our part by something that is very special. When you get a letter in the mail from somebody, it's really special, and so we feel like it's something that we can do for the community, even though we can't like provide food or like toiletries. We're just providing some positive energy, basically. So the Postman, we want to really thank our customers in the community for embracing us the way that they do. A lot of community members, this is their postal service. This is where they go to for their FedEx, their UPS, their DHL, and so we have a ton of community support. We're like a centerpiece. This is where you come to reach out to the rest of the world. This is where you come to send back your goods that you purchased. This is where you come to get the news. This is where you come to get uplifted. And so it's just really a center point in the community, and you get that when you come here. You get community, you get love, support, you're gonna laugh, maybe cry, but you're gonna definitely get some good energy when you come into the Postman. So if you are interested in supporting the efforts that we're doing, is you can basically, when you buy a stamp, buy an extra stamp, you can buy an envelope, you can send in some artwork, you can send in poetry, anything you think would be a really nice note to send along to someone else. Those are a few ways that you can get involved and help support what we're doing.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the morning show with Big O, and I'm your host for the day, Trey Holiday, here with Dr. Mook from UW, breaking all the COVID-19 issues down for us, brother. Thank you again for being here. This has been so informative and phenomenal. As you can see, we have set up our set a little bit differently right now. Dr. Mook is going to show us an actual experiment that'll help us understand a little bit more about this virus. Go ahead, Dr. Mook.
Thank you so much. Like I said, it's such an honor to be here, especially at Black.com, where I can be useful to the community and really show that science is effective on a day-to-day basis, not just in times of crisis. And so this is a little simple experiment just to explain why we're saying, you know, wash your hands with soap thoroughly, but also use 70% and above alcohol substances like your hand sanitizer, as well as rubbing alcohol. Those are the things that are going to be effective to fight against this COVID-19. And so, like I said, when you think about coronavirus, corona means crown of these large proteins on the surface that's actually making it this really, resistant, as well as integrated with the fatty stuff that is on top that's making that wall that protects it. So while soap interacts with that fatty stuff and is able to actually destroy that, alcohol interacts with the proteins as well as the fats. And so I have just regular eggs here. And I mean, Trey, you can testify that these are eggs, right?
All right, let's see here. Regular eggs. All right.
Yeah, and we have, the hand sanitizer, so we'll make sure that we'll sanitize ourselves here after this experiment. But so we have a regular eggs, and I just have the egg white from those eggs, because if you didn't know, eggs are a lot of protein. That's why we actually have them. Eggs are chock full of proteins. And so when you cook your eggs, it turns from this white, milky clear substance, and it actually becomes white and milky. That's what happens when you boil your egg or you poach an egg. This turns from clear to white. It's because you're breaking down the eggs and it's unfolding. So what we want to do is break down the proteins around the virus using things like alcohol, bleach, or soap that allows it to actually go ahead and move away. And so what I just have here is 70% of alcohol right here, which is exactly what is in your hand sanitizers, and that's the percentage that you want. And again, Mythbusters, you don't want things like vodka or liquor that have a low percentage, that will do nothing. And so you'll see if we put it in there, really we're not seeing much of a difference. Whereas when we put that in there, immediately it turns white. And so we are just completely killing the egg proteins in the same way that we want to kill the virus proteins. And so you want something with a really high percentage. So when you buy your hand sanitizer, make sure the percentage of alcohol that's in there is above 60%, okay? That's what we want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, this brings me to another question. Folks have been serious and persistent about the hand sanitizer right now, but there's also the adverse effects of using it too much. Can you speak to that a little bit, as folks are, trying to find ways to, keep themselves clean, but there's also the other element of like too much on your hands, and maybe it eliminates something else that's protecting you, right?
Yeah, there've been a couple articles where people are saying there's good bacteria on our, surfaces that allows us to do our day-to-day function, and the more we, kill that bacteria, the more we will be susceptible to other prolonged diseases. Well, here's the thing about that, is that there's a lot of bacteria in the world. In fact, in us ourselves, we are more bacteria than we are actual cells, human cells. So we have a lot of bacteria that we can go ahead and kill. And so right now, in this moment, it's important to practice these tips, because what you are in danger of, the immediate threat, is the virus, not necessarily the potential effect of not having good bacteria on your hands. And always, if you are eating a well-balanced diet, then your probiotics and taking, probiotics, then you are always going to have a supplement of good bacteria. And if you're worried about the alcohol, that's understandable, that's fine. Soap is very effective, and it doesn't have to be expensive soap. Again, the people who are selling, antibacterial soap, they're just trying to scam you, and let's be careful of those people. We don't have generational wealth to rely on, And so let's be careful of that. Let's save our money and buy cheap soap, dollar soap, If you're in a pinch, dishwashing soap is totally fine. Make sure you lather up, act like you're in Grey's Anatomy and you're about to scrub in for surgery, Make sure to get in between your fingernails, you're in between your actual fingers, your palms. Make sure to get all through this. The whole process should not be any shorter than 20 seconds under really warm water, and make sure that you then rinse off all that soap at the end and make sure you dry right after. And so those two things are effective.
You know what? You just mentioned something that I think folks don't understand a lot. Can you explain the difference between hot water and cold water washing your hands? I mean, if you have soap and it's cold water, what's the difference between the hot and the cold? Why hot?
Yeah, so, warm water is totally fine. And so it can be lukewarm. And honestly, cold water is also fine. The only, especially if you're getting it from a tap source, what you don't want to do is take cold water that's just been sitting around and then use that to wash your hands, because, temperature is something that deters bacteria and fungi. And so even though, yes, we're worried about viruses right now, there's still bacteria out there that is out to get us. Yeah. So in fact, right after this experiment, what we want to do is actually, hand sanitize our hands, make sure that we don't have any bad bacteria, like, eggs are a source of salmonella, and so we don't want to have that. So I think right now, while people are still worried and really hyper conscious about viruses, they're tending to forget that regular bacteria exist. And so let us, stay vigilant to that. So you don't need to scald your hands, under boiling water to wash. No. Lukewarm, warm water, as long as it's soapy, is totally fine. And if you need to use cold water, that is fine. Just make sure it's coming from a clean source, like, right out of your tap, or, out of a well or borehole if you're in Zimbabwe,
There you go. But for the people back home. Right.
Yeah.
So another kind of myth around hand sanitizer, again, just some of the things that I've been hearing, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, let's see what folks really need to know.
Yeah.
So people put it on their hands and it's wet, and they do like this to air dry it. And somebody was saying, like, no, you need to rub it into your hands in order for it to be effective. Help us understand. Is that a myth, again, that people are putting out there?
I think both methods work. We were taking it and we were rubbing it, that works. And so alcohol is a volatile substance. What that means is that it evaporates really quickly. And so while water, you need to boil it, it needs to reach to a certain temperature so that it becomes steam and evaporates. And it takes a long time for all that steam to come out of a pot if you're boiling it. Alcohol, has a really low threshold at which it starts evaporating into the atmosphere. And so when you put it on your hands, you really want to spread as much surface area on your hands as fast as possible, because it's evaporating quickly. And it's already coming in contact with that virus and destroying it immediately. So whether you are air drying or rubbing it, it's fine. What's important is spreading it as much as possible in every area. So just like you were doing the hand soap washing, you want to kind of practice that same theory when you're doing hand sanitizer. Get it everywhere and make sure you hand wash. You don't need too much. Just a couple squirts like we did right here is enough.
Oh, Dr. Mook, this is great, and thank you so much. So we have your bio that's coming up next. I know we're excited to talk a little bit more about this guy right here on the couch. You guys stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Thank you. Yeah. that I got at the University of Washington. And so I am a postdoctoral researcher who works on studying proteins like the ones that are surrounding coronavirus, but also not just studying them and understanding how proteins work, but also creating brand new ones to tackle some of the novel and important problems that now exist in the world. I am particularly interested in therapeutics and antibodies, as well as novel therapeutics, as well as agriculture. I'm from Zimbabwe. That's something that I'm very interested in. How can we fight climate change in the face of, farming and third world countries? And so while I am a researcher by day, I also on the side have a YouTube channel where I talk about, the diversity of STEM and why we need that in our area. But also I break down basic science concepts like what we did today, but relate it in a way that makes sense. And so I use hip hop to kind of relate in my community science critical concepts. And so if you go to my website, and that's where that bio came from, that is tamukainvestments.com/hip-hop biochemistry, you'll see the number of videos that I have been doing for the last 8 months to try and stimulate our community and our kids to start getting involved and engaged in STEM subjects at an early age. Yeah. Because right now, you see, it's just, it's a few of us Black scientists who are talking about this within our communities, and that shouldn't be the case. It should be so many of us, in our families. Our kids right now should actually be talking to our elders and engaging with them and kind of having a discussion and elevating the discourse. In fact, I encourage anyone with a degree in science right now to use it. Take it off the wall and use it right now. Amplify the voices of other scientists so that we drown out this nonsense and disinformation that is existing on the internet. Let's use our collective voices to really empower our people.
Dr. Mook, thank you so much. We appreciate this, and we'll be back with a bio from White King, and he'll be up next with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Attention everyone, this is not a drill. The governor just gave a stay-at-home order. That means stay your butt at home with 4 exceptions. You better stay your butt at home unless you're going to the grocery store, unless you're going to seek medical attention, unless you are going to work at an essential business. There are several essential businesses, and I'll give you some examples. Things like healthcare professionals, things like grocery store workers, jobs that society couldn't function without. If you work at one of those, then you can go to work. And then number 4, you can leave your house to do antisocial outdoors things. We know you need your fresh air, so you can go on a walk, you can go on a bike, but you cannot take a group hike. You cannot go and have a slumber party at your friend's crib. You can't go to any parties at all. You got to stay your butt at home. And I'm tagging all these people right here to spread this message. And this is the Stay Your Butt at Home challenge. Stay your butt at home. Oh, Jesus Christ.
This is how you stay safe in the Ronas. Don't touch your face in the Ronas. You gotta keep your space in the Ronas. Don't be brave in the Ronas. Face mask, back, we don't want that. Face mask, step back, you trying to catch that? Newsflash, no class, bring the schools back. Newsflash, food stash, gotta use that. This is how you stay safe in the Ronas. Don't touch your face in the Ronas. You gotta keep your space in the Ronas. Don't be brave in the Ronas. Works out, parties out, gotta be alone. Take care of the kids and clean up your home. Let the doctors and the nurses use a mask too. Think about everybody, not just you. Better watch your hands at the Ronas. No new friends during Ronas. Trump sending us our grandpas are Ronas. Getting paid from the Ronas. This is how you stay safe in the Ronas. Don't touch your face in the Ronas. You gotta keep your space in the Ronas. Don't be brave in the Ronas.
That's right,
guys, don't try to be brave. Come on, man. Just close your mouth when you cough and when you sneeze. Can you put it in your shoulder or in your elbow? Do something and make sure you're catching your germs, man. We don't want the Rona.
I'm Kiana Pickett, and we're at the Postman in Seattle, and we're keeping communities connected. So during these times of uncertainty, the Postman is trying to do their job by following our motto of keeping communities connected. And how we're doing that is we're basically sending out a special little note to your loved ones, your friends, our friends, for you, for free. So if you want to participate and take advantage of sending and spreading love, all you need to do is DM us, email us, call us, text us, an address, who you want to send to, their first name, last name, and their address, and we're going to send them a special note from us and from you. We're doing this because it's definitely a confusing time right now, challenging. A lot of change is going on, and so we see a lot of businesses doing their part. Maybe their doors are closed, maybe they're not